Princess Xyra, heir to the Xanthari Empire, stood in the grand hall of her palace, staring at the holographic map of the galaxy. The Galactic Council had just sent her an ultimatum. She must travel to Earth and form an alliance with humanity. But there was a twist. She refused to travel unless it was on a human ship. The Xanthari High Command was furious. No royal Xanthari has ever set foot on a human vessel, they argued. But Xyra was resolute. The humans had something she needed, and she would not trust anyone else to take her there. The council had no choice but to comply. A human ship would be sent to escort her. Commander Ethan Voss, a decorated officer in Earth's interstellar fleet, was chosen for the task. His ship, the Valiant, was known for its speed and battle strength. He expected this mission to be routine. But Xyra was no ordinary diplomat. Part 2. The Encounter. When Xyra arrived at the Valiant, Commander Voss was taken aback. She was not what he expected. With her sharp violet eyes and confident posture, she radiated power. Her presence made the ship feel smaller, as if she were in charge. "Welcome aboard," Ethan said, trying to keep his tone professional, though his mind raced with questions. "We leave for Earth as soon as you're ready." Xyra only nodded, but there was something in her gaze that made Ethan uneasy. She wasn't just a princess. There was a mystery about her, something she wasn't telling him. He had no time to dig into it, though. The mission was simple: get her to Earth. And that was it. But as they entered hyperspace, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The longer he traveled with Xyra, the more questions formed. Why had she chosen a human ship? Why was she so secretive about her reasons for this alliance? Part 3. The Attack. Days into their journey, disaster struck. A warning alarm blared through the ship. The Valiant was under attack. Ethan rushed to the bridge. Xyra was already there, calm as ever. "We're being hunted," she said, her voice steady, "by a race known as the Threshers." Threshers? Ethan's eyes widened. They were infamous across the galaxy for their brutality. No one had ever survived an encounter with them. "We need to get to a safe zone," Xyra added. "I'll help you navigate." Reluctantly, Ethan let her take control. She seemed to know exactly where to go, her fingers dancing across the controls as if she were born for this. The Valiant dodged another barrage of fire from the enemy ships, and for the first time, Ethan realized that Xyra wasn't just some princess. She was a fighter. Part 4. The Truth. The Valiant was badly damaged. The Threshers had outgunned them. With no choice but to abandon their original route, Ethan and Xyra were forced into uncharted space. There, Xyra finally revealed the truth. "The Threshers are after me," she admitted. "I didn't come to Earth just to form an alliance. I came to escape." Ethan stared at her, confused. "Escape? From what?" "My own empire," she said softly. "The Xanthari are no longer what they once were. There are factions within the empire that want me dead. Those who fear my power." Ethan didn't know whether to believe her, but the way she spoke, the weight in her voice, told him she was telling the truth. The more he listened, the more he realized that Xyra had been running long before she stepped onto his ship. Part 5. The Chase. With the Threshers hot on their trail, Ethan and Xyra raced through the unknown space. Every twist and turn could be their last. The Valiant was no longer just a ship. It was a lifeline. They fought back with every weapon they had, but the Threshers were relentless. The hours turned into days as they dodged and fought. Xyra was no longer just the princess on a diplomatic mission. She was a warrior, and together with Ethan, they'd made an unexpected team. But the more they'd fought, the more Ethan realized just how much Xyra was hiding. She knew more about the Threshers than she let on. She'd trained with them, battled them, even survived their ambushes. And yet, she still hadn't told him everything. Part 6. The Final Stand. As the Threshers closed in, Ethan knew they had no choice but to make a final stand. The Valiant was damaged, its systems failing. Xyra stood beside him on the bridge, her eyes filled with determination. "We don't have time for hesitation," she said. "If we're going down, we'll go down fighting." Together, they initiated the final defense, risking everything. Zyra's knowledge of the Thresher's tactics allowed them to outmaneuver their enemies just long enough to get a crucial advantage. The Thresher's flagship was within their reach. It was now or never. As the battle raged on, Ethan found himself trusting Zyra completely, not just as an ally, but as a friend. The bond they had formed in the midst of chaos was stronger than any alliance. In the end, the Threshers were defeated. The Valiant was damaged, but it had survived. And Zyra's mission, it had changed. She had come to Earth to escape, but now she had a new purpose: to rebuild her empire, and perhaps to do it alongside humanity. The journey had been far more than just a diplomatic mission. It had been a fight for survival, for trust, and for a future neither of them had expected. Princess Zyra stood tall in the grand hall of the Zenthari Palace, her violet eyes scanning the holographic map that glowed before her. She was the heir to the powerful Zenthari Empire, a race of beings known for their advanced technology and strength. Their empire spanned countless planets, each one filled with cities of shining metal, towering structures, and futuristic inventions. Yet despite all their power, Zyra felt trapped in a life dictated by the rules of her people. The Galactic Council, the governing body of the entire galaxy, had just given her an ultimatum. The time had come for her to travel to Earth. The planet was home to humans, a species the Zenthari had been watching for some time. The Council believed humanity was essential for the future of the galaxy, and Zyra's mission was to solidify an alliance with them. But there was a problem. "I will not travel to Earth unless I am aboard a human ship," Zyra said, her voice calm but unwavering. The council members on the other side of the holographic projection exchanged nervous glances. No one, in the history of the galaxy, had ever requested such a thing. No royal Zenthari had ever traveled on a human vessel. It was considered an insult, a violation of dignity. Humans were seen as primitive, their ships considered weak compared to Zenthari technology. One of the council members, a stern-looking man with sharp features and a cold stare, spoke up. "Princess, this is not how we do things. A Zenthari royal traveling aboard a human ship would be seen as a sign of weakness. It would damage our reputation across the galaxy." "I don't care about your reputation," Zyra replied. "This is my decision. I have my reasons. If you want me to go, this is the only way." The council tried to argue, but Zyra remained firm. She wasn't just stubborn. She had a deep personal reason for wanting to travel on a human ship, though she wasn't ready to share it. She knew the importance of her mission, but she also knew that to do this her way, she would have to face opposition from every corner of the galaxy. The council had no choice but to accept her terms, albeit reluctantly. After several minutes of tense silence, the council leader sighed, his voice filled with resignation. "Very well, Princess. We will arrange for a human ship to escort you. You will leave at once." Zyra didn't smile, but she gave a subtle nod. She had won the first battle. Now, the real journey was about to begin. Days later, the sleek form of the human ship Valiant docked at the Zenthari space station. It was a modest vessel by Zenthari standards, nothing compared to the grand starships of their empire, but it had served humanity well. Commander Ethan Voss stood at the center of the ship's command room, watching the preparations unfold. His ship, though small, was fast and capable. It had made countless journeys across the stars. But this mission was different. Ethan had heard the rumors about Princess Zyra, the royal heir of the Zenthari Empire. She was known for her beauty, her intelligence, and her cold demeanor. Few had ever met her in person, and fewer still had lived to tell the tale. She was said to be a fierce leader, and now she was coming to Earth. When he first received the assignment, Ethan thought it was a joke. Why would a powerful princess like Zyra want to travel aboard a human ship? There were rumors that she had requested this very thing, and Ethan's superiors had reluctantly agreed. The idea of a Zenthari royal traveling on a ship like his made Ethan uneasy. It seemed wrong. "Captain, we're ready to welcome her aboard," Lieutenant Harper said as she entered the room. Her tone was matter-of-fact, but Ethan could tell she was nervous too. Ethan nodded. "Let's get this over with." As the airlock doors opened, Tyra stepped onto the Valiant. She was stunning, her long dark hair flowing down her back like a river of ink, her skin glowing faintly with a soft purple hue. She wore a silver jumpsuit adorned with the insignia of her empire, a symbol of power and pride. Her presence seemed to fill the room, making the cramped space of the Valiant feel larger. Her violet eyes locked with Ethan's, and for a brief moment, he felt as though she could see straight through him. "Commander Voss," she said, her voice calm but authoritative, "I trust you have made the necessary arrangements for our departure." Ethan straightened up, trying not to appear intimidated. "Yes, Your Highness. We're ready to depart for Earth whenever you are." Her eyes swept over the room, taking in the crew with an air of quiet authority. It was clear she was used to being in charge. The crew was tense, unsure of how to behave in her presence. After all, she wasn't just a princess. She was a symbol of a powerful empire. "I'll be in my quarters," Zyra said, her tone dismissive. Without waiting for a response, she turned and walked away, her steps graceful and deliberate. Ethan watched her go, a mix of awe and concern in his chest. Something about her felt different. She wasn't like the diplomats and dignitaries he had met in the past. There was something sharp, something hidden beneath her calm exterior. The first time Commander Ethan Voss truly met Princess Zyra was nothing like he had imagined. He had prepared himself for a woman of power and grace, someone who would be diplomatic and perhaps a little aloof. But nothing had prepared him for the sheer presence she carried with her as she stepped onto the Valiant. Zyra wasn't just a princess. She was a force of nature. Her dark violet eyes seemed to pierce through everything, including the cold steel of the ship. She wore a silvery jumpsuit that glinted under the harsh lights of the ship's airlock. Her long, dark hair, which looked almost black, cascaded down her back in waves. But there was something about her that wasn't just beautiful. It was powerful. Everything about her screamed royalty, but not in the way Ethan expected. It wasn't arrogance or the usual pride associated with leaders. No, it was something deeper, something unshakable. She walked with the confidence of someone who had faced death and walked away from it unscathed. As she entered the ship's command room, Ethan felt a wave of unease wash over him. The crew, who had been working on their daily routines, suddenly grew quiet. It wasn't just because Zyra was royalty. It was the way she moved, like a shadow that dominated the room without ever saying a word. "Commander Voss," she said, her voice calm and steady, as if she had been in command of ships like the Valiant all her life. Her gaze locked with his, and for a brief moment, Ethan found himself struggling to look away. "I trust you have made the necessary preparations for our departure to Earth." Ethan quickly regained his composure. "Yes, Your Highness," he replied, though his voice felt a little tight. "We're all set for departure." Zyra's eyes swept across the room, taking in the small crew who were standing a little straighter now. They weren't just starstruck. They were intimidated. Ethan could see it in their faces. Her presence had an effect on everyone she encountered. It was as if she carried the weight of an empire on her shoulders, and it made everyone in her path feel the gravity of it. "I'll be in my quarters," Zyra said simply, turning away and walking toward the corridor. Without looking back, she was gone. The crew returned to their stations, but there was an air of tension in the room. Ethan felt it too. He'd been on many missions, some dangerous, some uncertain, but nothing compared to this. This wasn't just about getting a diplomat to Earth. No, there was something else here, something hidden beneath the surface. Later that evening, Ethan walked to his own quarters after another long shift. The hum of the ship's engines filled the empty hallways. The Valiant had a long history, one of battles fought and victories won, but it was now more of a transport vessel than a warship. The mission to escort Princess Zyra felt strange. Earth wasn't a galaxy superpower. There was no reason why such an important figure would choose to travel in a human ship. He sat on his bed, rubbing his eyes, trying to shake off the feeling that kept creeping into his thoughts. Why had Zara insisted on traveling aboard the Valiant? Why hadn't she chosen one of the magnificent Centauri warships, vessels that could travel across galaxies with ease? The more he thought about it, the more questions piled up. But there was no answer. At least, not yet. The next morning, the ship continued its journey, and Princess Lyra was still in her quarters. Ethan had given her space, knowing that she was a royal figure with her own needs, but the curiosity inside him kept gnawing at him. He needed to understand what made her tick, what made her choose the Valiant. The truth was, no one had ever been this close to the Centauri royal family before. The entire galaxy knew of them, but few ever interacted with them directly. As the hours stretched into days, the distance between the Valiant and Earth grew smaller. The crew continued their work, but there was always an undercurrent of tension. The Centauri princess had everyone on edge. She hardly interacted with anyone except for the few crew members she needed to address. And even then, she spoke with such precision and control that it was hard to tell if she was truly interested in what they had to say. Ethan finally decided he couldn't sit back and wait. He needed answers. He needed to know more about the princess and why she insisted on this trip. As if on cue, the ship's AI flashed a notification on his console. Princess Lyra requests a private meeting, Commander. Ethan raised an eyebrow. This was unusual. He was used to military commands and simple orders, but a private meeting with royalty. That wasn't something he was prepared for, but duty called. He took a deep breath and headed for her quarters. When he arrived, he found her standing by the large window that looked out at the stars. There was something about the way she gazed at the endless expanse of space that made her look both distant and deeply connected to it at the same time. It was like she could feel every star and every planet, and perhaps even knew things about them that no one else could. "Commander Voss," she said, without turning to face him. "Please, sit." Ethan stepped into the room, feeling a bit out of place in the lavish quarters. The walls were adorned with alien art, strange objects that glowed with a faint light, and the floor was covered with intricate rugs from the Centauri homeworld. It was a beautiful room, but it felt cold, like the princess herself. He sat across from her, still unsure of what she wanted. "You requested this meeting, Your Highness. What is it that you need?" Zitara finally turned to face him, her eyes meeting his with a piercing intensity that made Ethan feel as if she could see right through him. For a moment, there was a silence between them. Then she spoke, her voice softer than before but still commanding. "There's something you need to know, Commander. About me. About why I am on this ship." Ethan wasn't sure what she meant. He was expecting something political, something about the alliance with Earth, but she was talking about something deeper. "I don't want to be here, Commander," she continued, her tone now almost wistful. "I didn't want to leave my home. I didn't want to be part of this galaxy-wide game of power and control. But the truth is, I don't have a choice." Ethan frowned. "What are you talking about? You're the heir to the Centauri Empire. You have everything." Zyra's gaze hardened. "Do I? Do you really think power comes with peace? The Empire is fractured. There are factions that want to control it, and there are those who believe that I am a threat to their plans. I didn't choose this life, Commander. It chose me." Her words hung in the air like a heavy fog. Ethan didn't know what to say. She was more than just a princess. She was a woman running from something. "Then why Earth? Why a human ship?" he asked. Zyra looked out the window again, as if the stars themselves held the answer. "Because I have nowhere else to go. I can't go back to my home. I can't trust anyone in my empire. The humans, they don't know me, and they don't expect anything from me. I need their help. I need a way out." Ethan sat back in his chair, the weight of her words sinking in. He had thought this mission was just a formality, But now he realized it was anything but. This was about survival. Princess Zyra wasn't just looking for an alliance. She was running from something far darker than anything he could imagine. "I didn't choose you, Commander," she said softly. "But you are the only one who can help me. I've trusted you with my life, and I'm asking you now to keep me safe." Ethan stared at her, realizing that the journey ahead was going to be far more complicated and dangerous than he had ever expected. There were shadows behind Zyra's eyes, and those shadows were coming for her, but Ethan wasn't sure yet if he was ready to step into that darkness. The peaceful hum of the Valiant's engines was interrupted by a sudden, loud beeping from the control panel. Ethan Voss, still sitting in his quarters, jumped to his feet. He had just finished reading the latest reports when the alarm blared, sending his heart racing. The ship was in danger. He wasted no time. Grabbing his jacket, he rushed out of his room, pushing past crew members who were hurrying to their stations. The crew had been tense ever since they left the safety of Zenthari space, but now something was wrong. Something was very wrong. As he made his way to the command room, he could feel the weight of the situation. The Valiant was a small ship compared to the mighty warships of the galaxy, and its weapons were basic at best. They had no defense against a real attack. The crew knew this, and the reality was sinking in fast. When he arrived at the command room, he found the crew already at their posts. Lieutenant Harper, his second in command, was staring at the ship's radar, her face pale. "Commander," she said, her voice trembling, "we've been hit. Something's jamming our communications, and I can't pinpoint the enemy's position. But it's coming from the direction of the asteroid belt." Ethan didn't waste a second. "Prepare the ship for evasive maneuvers. Get us out of here." The crew sprang into action. Harper quickly input the coordinates for the closest safe space route, while the rest of the crew worked to get the ship's shields activated. Ethan watched the screen, his mind racing. The asteroid belt was a dangerous place, but it was also the perfect place for a hidden attack. Whoever was out there knew the terrain and used it to their advantage. But what terrified him most was the timing. They had just crossed into uncharted space. No one was supposed to be here. "Commander, they're closing in on us," Lieutenant Harper called out, her voice urgent. "It looks like a ship, but it's unlike anything we've seen before. It's too fast. We can't outrun it." Ethan's heart sank. They were outgunned, outclassed, and surrounded. Whoever was out there was more prepared than they could have ever imagined. At that moment, the Valiant rocked violently. The lights flickered, and a loud screech filled the ship's hull. Ethan was thrown off balance, barely managing to steady himself. "Status report," he shouted, his voice steady despite the chaos. "Shields are down to 40%, and we've sustained some structural damage." One of the crew members yelled, clearly shaken, "We won't last much longer if they keep firing." Ethan's mind raced. He knew they had to make a decision, and fast. If they didn't act quickly, they would be sitting targets for whoever was attacking them. He turned to Harper. "Get us closer to the asteroid field. We'll use it for cover. We can't fight back." "Not like this." Harper nodded, her face tight with determination. The ship veered toward the asteroid belt, maneuvering with all the speed it could muster. The Valiant shook again, and this time, they could see the shape of the enemy ship emerging from the darkness. It was sleek, dark, and built for speed. But the most terrifying thing about it was its size. It was massive, much bigger than the Valiant, and it was moving with such precision that it didn't look like it had to try hard at all. The enemy ship was hunting them. Ethan's mind went into overdrive. "Activate the decoy drones," he ordered. "Distract them long enough for us to get a shot at their engines." The crew immediately began to deploy the drones. These small, barely visible machines would simulate the Valiant's signals and give the enemy ship something to focus on, buying them precious time. It was a desperate measure, but it was all they had. But just as they launched the drones, a flash of light erupted from the enemy ship. It fired a blast of energy so strong that the Valiant shook violently, throwing everyone in the room off their feet. Ethan's head slammed against the console, and for a moment, everything went black. When he came to, he felt a sharp pain in his head. He blinked a few times, trying to focus. The world around him was spinning. The air was thick with smoke, and the walls of the command room were cracked. Lights flickered intermittently, casting eerie shadows across the room. "Commander," Harper's voice broke through the haze. Ethan tried to sit up, but the pain in his skull made him wince. "Commander, are you okay?" "I'm fine," he managed to say, though his voice was shaky. "What happened?" "We're not fine, sir," Harper said, her voice tight with worry. "The ship took a direct hit to the engine room. We've lost power to most of the systems. The shields are down, and the enemy ship is circling around for another pass." Ethan's heart sank. He could hear the panic in her voice. The Valiant was barely holding on. They were on the verge of collapse, and it was only a matter of time before the enemy ship came in for the kill. "We need to fight back," Ethan said, his voice low but resolute. "Get me a weapons status report. We can't just run anymore." Harper hesitated for a moment before nodding. "I'll check the auxiliary systems. But, Commander, we're in no position to fight. The only thing we can do now is try to escape." Ethan shook his head. "We don't run. Not with the princess aboard." The thought of Tyra brought him back to reality. They couldn't just let her be captured. They had to protect her at all costs. If the enemy ship had come for them, then they must have known she was on board. They had to stop them, or everything they had worked for would be lost. With newfound determination, Ethan grabbed the nearest communication device. He activated the emergency link to Xera's quarters. "Princess, are you there?" he asked, his voice urgent. There was a brief pause, and then Cyrus' calm voice answered. "I'm here, Commander. What's happening?" "Stay where you are. The ship is under attack. We're doing everything we can to protect you." Zyra's voice remained cool, but there was a hint of something more. Something that wasn't just concern, but perhaps a sense of resignation. "I know, Commander. I'm not afraid of these attackers. They're after me, not the ship. I'll stay here, but you must understand this. If they want me, they will stop at nothing to get me." Ethan's heart raced. He wasn't sure what she meant by those words, but he knew one thing for certain. This attack wasn't just random. Whoever was out there knew exactly who they were after. And if they had come for Xyra, then they weren't just some rogue pirates or space bandits. No, this was something far more dangerous. He turned back to Harper. "Get those weapons online. We're going to make a stand." Harper hesitated, looking at him with a mixture of fear and respect. "Commander, are you sure? We're barely holding it together. If we try to fight them, we might not make it." "We don't have a choice," Ethan said, his voice steely with resolve. "We protect her. We protect this ship. We fight." The Valiant was battered, but it wasn't done yet. They were going to fight back, no matter what. The enemy ship came around for another attack, and this time, Ethan was ready. He wasn't going to let them take Xyra, not without a fight. The Valiant's weapon systems roared to life, and the ship fired back. Energy blasts shot out from the small human ship, aimed at the much larger enemy. The enemy ship retaliated with a blast of its own, shaking the Valiant to its core. But as the battle raged on, something strange began to happen. The enemy ship wasn't just firing at random. It was targeting specific systems on the Valiant. They were trying to disable the ship, not destroy it entirely. Ethan's gut twisted. Whoever these attackers were, they weren't here to kill. They were here to capture. The battle outside the Valiant raged on. Every blast from the enemy ship sent ripples through the hull, shaking the very core of the ship. Ethan Voss stood in the command room, gripping the edge of the control panel, eyes fixed on the screen. The enemy ship was relentless. It didn't matter how many times they fired back. It seemed like it was only a matter of time before the Valiant would be crippled beyond repair. Status report. Ethan barked, his voice strained from the stress of the situation. Lieutenant Harper was at her station, fingers flying over the controls. She turned to face him, her face grim. Shields are at 30%. We've lost the port engines. We're on minimal power now, Commander. If we don't do something soon, we won't be able to outrun them. Ethan felt his heart race. Every decision now felt like it was the difference between life and death. The enemy ship had been circling them for hours, launching calculated, strategic attacks that never seemed to let up. We need to make one final move, Ethan said, determination hardening his voice. We won't survive if we just keep dodging. Harper, can you get the weapons back online? I'll try, she answered, but the damage is severe. I don't know how much longer we can keep this up. As Harper worked, Ethan glanced toward the communications panel. The static noise from earlier still buzzed, and the distorted voice of the princess, Tyra, crackled through. Commander, I need to speak to you. Ethan's brow furrowed. He rushed over to the panel, pressing the button to activate the communication. Tyra's face appeared on the screen. There was no panic in her expression, only a calm that seemed almost out of place, given the situation they were in. What is it, Your Highness? Ethan asked, his voice clipped. I have something important to tell you. Tyra began, her gaze unwavering. The attackers, they are not just pirates, as you might think. They are sent by my family. Ethan blinked, trying to process the sudden shift. What are you talking about? Your family. His voice was laced with confusion and disbelief. The idea of her own family sending attackers was incomprehensible. Yes, Tyra confirmed. They are part of a faction within the Xanthari Empire that wants me dead. I am the rightful heir to the throne, Commander. But there are those who want to see me gone so they can take control of the Empire. They have been hunting me for months. Ethan took a step back, his mind whirling. Your own family is trying to kill you. The words seemed foreign on his tongue, even as he said them. He couldn't wrap his mind around the idea. The Xanthari Empire was known for its power and unity. The thought of internal strife, especially within the royal family, was almost unthinkable. Tyra nodded solemnly. Yes, my father, the Emperor, is dead, and since his death, a struggle for the throne has broken out. I've been on the run ever since. I knew this day would come. They would stop at nothing to ensure I don't take my rightful place as the ruler. That's why I'm here, Commander. I didn't want to bring this war to your doorstep, but I don't have a choice. Ethan was silent for a moment, trying to absorb everything Tyra had just revealed. Why didn't you tell us this sooner? He asked, his voice tense. We've been putting ourselves at risk all this time, and you kept this from us. Tyra's eyes softened, but her expression remained firm. I didn't want to endanger you, Commander. I didn't want to drag you into the conflict. But now, the truth cannot be ignored. The people hunting me, they know everything about me. They know I've left my planet, and they won't stop until I'm dead. Ethan took a deep breath. His mind was racing. Everything had changed in a single moment. The mission he thought was about protecting a royal figure, just a simple diplomatic task, had turned into a dangerous fight for survival. The princess wasn't just a dignitary, she was a political figure in a deadly game. And now he was caught in it. His ship was under attack, not because of a random encounter, but because of her. Are there more ships? Ethan asked, his voice low. Are there more of them out there, ready to strike? Yes, Tyra confirmed. More ships, more factions within the Empire. They know where I am, and they will send everything they have to stop me from reaching Earth. We need to make a decision quickly. Time is running out. Ethan's eyes narrowed. He could feel the weight of the choice now. They had to fight back. But fighting back meant going up against a much larger enemy, one that had resources, power, and the full backing of a divided empire. He looked over at Lieutenant Harper, who was still working feverishly at her console. Harper, Ethan called. We need to make a stand. Get the weapons online. We fight back. Harper hesitated, her fingers hovering over the controls. Are you sure, Commander? We're outmatched. I don't think we can win this. I don't care if we win, Ethan snapped, his voice filled with resolve. We're going to survive, and we're going to make sure she does too. Harper looked at him, then nodded, understanding his decision. Understood. I'll reroute the auxiliary power to the weapon systems. Ethan turned back to the screen, meeting Xyra's eyes. We're going to fight. We're going to make sure you survive. Xyra's gaze softened, a flicker of something akin to gratitude flashing across her features. Thank you, Commander. I knew I could count on you. Ethan took a deep breath, steadying himself. He couldn't afford to falter now. He had a crew to protect, and a princess whose life was now tied to the future of an entire empire. He had never expected any of this. He had never expected to be caught in the middle of a war between factions of an alien empire. But there was no turning back now. He had to protect her. And he had to protect the Valiant. The enemy ship came around again, its massive silhouette cutting through the dark void of space. The Valiant's weapon systems hummed to life as Harper worked at the console, rerouting power from damaged systems to the ship's laser cannons. It was their last chance. We have weapons online, Commander, Harper said, her voice tight. We can fire, but it's not going to be enough. If they don't retreat, we'll be facing them head-on, with nothing but our makeshift defenses. Ethan nodded grimly. We're not running. We'll take the fight to them. He turned back to Xyra's image on the screen. Prepare yourself, Your Highness. The battle's coming. Stay hidden and stay safe. This is our last shot. Xyra nodded silently, her expression unreadable. But there was something in her eyes now. Something fierce, a resolve that matched his own. Ethan turned back to the control panel, focusing on the task at hand. The enemy ship was closing in, and they had no time left to waste. He activated the Valiant's weapon systems, targeting the enemy's engines, the heart of their power. The ship's guns fired, and bright, sharp energy blasts pierced the darkness. The enemy ship returned fire, but the Valiant moved quickly, dodging and weaving through the incoming blasts. The ship's shields held for a moment, but Ethan knew it wouldn't last long. We need to take their engines out now, Ethan shouted. Harper worked quickly, pressing buttons and rerouting systems in a frantic attempt to aim the ship's remaining weapons at the enemy's weak points. The Valiant shook violently as it endured more hits, but it didn't stop. They couldn't stop. They were all in this together. And so they fought. With every shot, with every evasive maneuver, they held on. But through it all, one thought burned in Ethan's mind. They couldn't lose. Not now. Not with the truth finally revealed. The Valiant shuddered under another blast. The lights flickered once more, casting long, eerie shadows across the command room. Ethan Voss stood at the helm, his hands gripping the controls with white-knuckled intensity. The enemy ship was right on their tail, its dark silhouette cutting through the cold void of space. It was relentless, showing no sign of slowing down. Shields are down to 20%, Commander. Lieutenant Harper shouted from her station, her voice filled with urgency. We can't take another hit like that. If we don't make it to the safe zone soon, we're done for. Ethan's mind raced. The Valiant was smaller, weaker, and outgunned by the enemy ship. It was only a matter of time before they couldn't dodge the incoming attacks. They were in a desperate situation, running out of options, and the chase was far from over. He had to think fast. He had to make the right move. Harper, divert all remaining power to the engines. We need to outrun them, he commanded, his voice sharp and steady despite the growing pressure. Harper's fingers danced across the console, her face illuminated by the flickering lights. Diverting power now, Commander. We'll have a bit more speed, but we're sacrificing everything else to do it. Ethan didn't hesitate. He knew they had no other choice. The Valiant was fragile, but it was fast. They had to push their luck and hope the enemy ship wasn't fast enough to catch up.